Welcome everybody to another CTC webinar over the lunch hour here. Today we're going to be talking about add-in overload and taming the ribbon with suite settings. My name is Sean Zerbis, the technical evangelist here at CTC, and today we're going to be talking about how to actually configure the Revit Express tools and some of our other tools to actually work on the ribbon in a slightly more tame way. So pay attention as we're going through this here. By the way, I always keep an eye on the questions window over there. If you have questions while we're talking, feel free to jot them down. I'll try to answer them while we're talking about these topics. Additionally, as always, we're recording this webinar, and it should be put up on the YouTube channel here in the near future for you, so you can go ahead and review this for your own needs to be able to tame the ribbon in your office, whichever method is best for you. With that, let's jump into the PowerPoint here and start talking about some of the issues. So, this topic today came directly from many of you who've given us feedbacks on our webinars. You've asked for this topic for a while, so that's why we're covering it. Many of you have written in and said, hey, you guys have so many great add-ins, but we just have too many, and the users don't know which tools to use specifically. Or maybe I don't want the users in my company using such and such a tool. Or maybe I want to just roll these tools out slowly so I don't overwhelm everybody, or even myself perhaps. So how do I limit this down, and how do I really kind of tune and scale back this set of tools so that people get the right tools in their hands, the right add-ins on their ribbon, and have an easier time understanding what they're supposed to be using? So the solution to this is suite settings, and it's actually been around since the very early stages of our Revit Express tools. It's used to limit certain tools' availability. You can do the configuration in two different major ways, one that we call the sneaker configuration, or the manual walk-around way, where you can actually turn off individual tools on individual computers. The trick about this is you may have to allow users to have access to all the ribbon options. They could potentially turn tools back on with this method, but that's up to them to turn them back on potentially. But then they have other controls, still available for tuning some of the graphics on screen. You could have the ability to completely turn off their access to all ribbon options if you wanted to, but that kind of nerfs some of the other functionality that you may want to have them have access to. The other method here, if you have a pretty solid IT team in-house, and they're setting up your computers, and they are probably going to be using Active Directory. And we have tuned this tool set to actually function really well with Active Directory. And so I'm going to show you today how you can actually configure those tools as well. This will actually allow users to choose some of the ribbon options, for example, what type of icons they want and how they want certain things grouped. But you also limit their ability to turn on tools you don't want them to have access to yet. So that's really the best way of configuring the setup here. But depending on how advanced your company is right now, or how much IT control or buy-in you can get, you may need to use a sneaker config, or you can use the Active Directory config. And I'm going to show both of those today. So let's jump into Revit directly and take a look at this. Within the Revit environment, first things first, to be able to configure anything, you have to have the tools installed that you want to be controlling, and you do have to be in a project. It doesn't matter what project. I'm just going to go ahead and start up with the basic architectural template, so there's nothing really on screen. I'm not going to use any of the tools today. We're just going to limit which ones we have access. So up here in the Revit Express tools, and even here on my RET content tab, and I'll actually show you how I did this as well. If you happen to have all of our tools on your computer right now, you've got the batch suite, maybe you've got data suite, maybe you don't, I don't know, manager suite, project suite. You've also perhaps got SuperDoor configurator and casework configurator. Well, you can see here, if I took these two tools right here, pulled them off this RET content ribbon, and I was to grab this and try and fit this up on this ribbon, my screen's just not wide enough to contain all of these tools, even in their small icon form. So if this is something you've got going on, I'll actually show you a trick today how you can potentially take these two configurator tools, or any of our tools for that matter, and put them on different tabs if you really wanted to. So I've got mine that automatically drop up here on the RET content tab, whereas by default they go to Revit Express Tools tab. I'll show you that later on. A little extra added tip. So with each one of our tools, though, every one of them has suite settings. There's that button, the top left button. The very first button on all of the ribbons is suite settings. And they all have a very similar layout inside that tool set. Now I'm going to focus on the project suite today, since most everybody who I have on the call today, I believe, is using project suite in some form. So if I go into suite settings, it's going to pull up the dialog box here for the CTC BIM project suite. Any other tool, of course, if I grab manager suite, it would say CTC BIM manager suite settings. Regardless, you're going to have these two tabs, ribbon button visibility and licensing. You have the ability to, right here in the sneaker configuration, walk around to all the computers in your office and configure what tools you want them to have access to. I could say, you know what, I don't want everybody to get BIM list administrator, and so I can check that off. Or I can say, you know what, we're an architectural firm, we have 0 use for length calculator, I can turn that one off, and I can limit the availability for users to leverage that tool. So if I do that, oh, and also, by the way, by default, when you first install our tools right now, it's going to say group the free icons under a single ribbon button, and the use small icons is not set, which basically puts all the free tools we've got under one big button, and then all the paid-for tools are out there on the ribbon. My personal preference is to see all of the tools. I feel like having a tool that I'm going to be using out in front of me instead of hidden away is better, because I'll remember where it is more. So I like to just, not group all of my icons, but if I do this, this ribbon gets so long, so I come back and I use the small icons. That's an option that I have. Well, users should be able to change this for themselves. That's my personal opinion. So as long as you leave the project suite settings button turned on, when I save this, this button needs to stay on. Then what will happen is they'll be able to get back in this box and change the setting however they feel they want. But of course, if you're using the sneaker install, they may also see these options right here. And when they see these options, they may check things on that you don't want. So what some of my clients will do is they'll actually take the suite settings button itself, turn it off completely. Then users can't even see the button. But at that point, the only way to control what's visible and what is not visible is from a text file. And makes it a little bit more inconvenient to control how this information is representing on the ribbon. So my personal preference is to leave this on, but again, it depends on how much security you need to have. If you're doing the sneaker configuration, you'll have to make your call as to whether you want to do that or not. Now, if I save this right now, I'm going to click OK and close this down. Right now, you can see I have BIM list admin and I have length calculator on my ribbon right now. When I shut this down, I'm going to close down all of Revit to get this setting to effect. I've got the PowerPoint up there in the background. I'm going to reopen up Revit at this point. Now Revit's opening up. The splash screen is on my other monitor, so we'll give it a second here. There we go. It's popping on the main screen. It's opening up into Revit. It's loading up the add-ins. All the add-ins that I have right now are loading at this point, and it's reading all their settings files. This is true for pretty much every manufacturer of any add-in out. At the Revit Express Tools now, you can see I have no longer, even without a project open, I don't have BIM list admin, and I no longer have length calculator on my Revit Express Tools ribbon. If I open up into a project or into a new project, a template or whatever, you should see here on the Revit Express Tools tab that BIM list admin and length calculator are gone. Okay, that's one way to control that. Suite settings, and that works for every one of our suites. You can go around and you can check or uncheck the boxes that you want to see, have people see. You can even change these settings right here. When you click save and you shut it down, that will start to limit what they have. All right, that's the settings at the most elementary level. Let's take a look at another level where you can control some of these settings. What I'm going to do is call up Windows Explorer, pull this across to my main screen. In Windows Explorer, all of these settings are able to be controlled from a file as well. So this Suite Settings button right here in its native format, if I go to the C drive of my computer, Program Data, Autodesk. Inside of Autodesk, you're going to scroll down and find Revit, Add-ins, and then whatever version of Revit you're working with. Today, I'm working on Revit 2015, so I'm going to go into the 2015 folder. If you have multiple versions of Revit and you're using the manual sneaker configuration, you'll have to configure this for each of the individual 4 versions. So that, in 2016, maybe you want to release a tool that you didn't want to release in 2015. You have that ability, that granularity. Most of my clients don't do that, and most of my clients are usually having all the same tools released to everybody. So usually what they'll do is they'll go in here and they'll edit this settings file that I'm about to show you, and then they'll just copy it around to all of the individual different tools. So we're going to go back to Project Suite right here, Project Suite Bundle. That's the folder that we're going to be in, into the Contents folder. All right, so let me just put this for you. C, Program Data, Autodesk, Revit, Add-ins, Version, whichever version you're working with on your computers, CTC, whatever projects, whichever suite you're dealing with, .bundle/contents. All right, this folder right here contains the settings that are configured by this button, and some other things as well, some major, things that we need to have. What you need to do is go down here to the band called Ribbon Button Visibility Settings.txt. This file right here, if I pull this across the main screen, is just a text file. And anything that's in this list right down here at the bottom, if this list, it will be visible. So if, for example, you had gone into Suite Settings and you had turned off the Suite Settings button itself, that would be this entry right here. In this file, it would be removed. If you wanted to turn it back on, you go back up here to the master list and you copy it, don't cut it, copy it, and basically paste it right back down here without a hashtag sign or a number sign, a pound sign in front of it. In fact, what some of my clients will do is this here. They'll copy this entire list at top, they'll go down here to the bottom, paste the entire list, and then they'll just take and remove the little pound sign in front of each of the tools they want users to be able to leverage. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this for a few of these guys here. We're going to be restarting Revit a couple times today, by the way, just so you all know. Let's see, I'm going to remove Schedule Excel, Spreadsheet Link, this guy, and we'll leave View Creator. So I have pretty well limited down my ribbon at this point. I'm configuring this from the text file. So if I save this, and I now copy this around to all 4 versions of Revit in those 4 different folders, and you can potentially use a script or something to copy that around pretty easily, then every one of those same settings will be set in all versions of Revit. I've just removed the pound sign that basically uncommented it. That's what that does. So I'm going to close this down now, and I'm going to restart Revit again. So I'm going to shut down Revit, fire it right back up from my desktop over here, give it a second to pop on screen. And in this case, you're going to now see that I have off all of the settings button and the admin tools and a bunch of others as well, so that in the Revit Express Tools here, you notice my project suite is significantly more compact. Now I've really tamed the ribbon because now users are only getting 9 tools instead of the original, I don't know, what, 17 tools or something that comes along with it. So I've really limited that list down. You can do that for, again, other tools like Manager Suites. You can do this for a lot of different things. You can control what people have access to. And now, when they go into an actual project file, when they're on the Revit Express Tools, at this point, they don't have the ability to control anything about the settings of these suites right here. This suite right here specifically. The other suites still have the Suite Settings button, but the Project Suite does not have the suite settings, so I can't change how my icons are laid out, if it's large or small icons, if they're grouped or not. I don't have any control. My personal preference, again, is to let users have some control over that. I feel like they work better when they can have their interface laid out how they like. So I'm going to pull this Revit off to the side here. I'm going to go back into this ribbon button visibility settings text, and I'm going to turn back on suite settings right here and any other tools that perhaps I want to have turned on. All right, so that's one way that you can control this, is by this ribbon button visibility settings. And every single one of my suites, they all have that. If you go into their proper folder, they all have a suite settings. You can control them manually. You can control them from the text file. Either way, that works. And you can sneaker configure this if you want to just take that ribbon button visibility settings file, copy it to a jump drive or a thumb drive or whatever you want to call it, run around to the computers in the office and copy that file into those folders, or even set up a little script that copies it into those folders automatically, a little batch file. That would be fine. That will basically get those settings pushed out to all of the users. That's method one. Method number two. This is the one where we're going to be going ahead and using the active reconfiguration. This one's much more universal. It doesn't require near as much sneaker configuration, and if you're using Active Directory and pushing settings to people already anyway, you can actually have the IT team push out this next little settings file. And I'm going to show you exactly what it is and where it's supposed to go. And I'm also going to show you a way that if you do have to do a little bit of a sneaker configuration, but you want to use Active Directory still to control it, you can kind of use a hybrid type control here. So let's jump back over into the program data here. At the very top of this, let me actually clear out my ribbon button visibility settings, because if I forget to do this and I get into a client demo later on today, they're going to be visible and that's going to be embarrassing. So let me get this cleared back out and get my Revit all set up the way that I like it, which is showing everything. All right, save that. We're going to get out of that file and we're going to pay attention to one. The other file here, if I scroll up towards the top, is a button or a settings CTC BIM project suite settings.txt. Each of the individual suites has this text file with its own suite name in it. Now this file doesn't do anything when it's in this folder whatsoever. We give it to you so you have the option to use it, but it doesn't do anything here. For it to work, you actually have to do a little bit of reading, or in this case, watching the presentation today, because I'm going to show you what you have to do. When I open up this particular file, the instructions at the top says, for this to be used, this file must appear in this folder, Program Data, CTC Suite Settings. Okay, let's pull this out of the way for a minute. We're in Program Data right now, but we're in the Autodesk Revit folder for 2015. This is supposed to go to Program Data CTC Suite Settings. That's where it's intended to be. So I'm going to pull another Windows Explorer window across here, and you're going to see here I've got some settings that are already out there. These are my icon settings. All right, when I was talking about earlier, in Revit, you have, let me pull Revit back up here on screen. Let's see, here we go. But on the suite settings, you have the ability to choose whether you want small icons, whether you want it grouped or not. Okay, all these settings right here, these little three options, those are actually controlled by this file right here in CTC Suite Settings underneath Program Data. So if I was to go to my Project Suite Icon Settings.txt file, it's not the same file as this one, by the way, but the icon settings, you can also push out company-wide as a standard, as a default standard, what you want those icons to look like. By default, when Revit installs, or when the Revit Express Tools install, they have the free tools grouped again. I told that before. Free tools grouped and large icons. Well, if you go into this settings here, you can say use small ribbon icons equals true. Okay, by default this says false. You can just change this to true. That'll use the small icons. You can also go down here and change where it's grouped, or sorry, whether or not the free tools are grouped. By default this says true. You can set this to false. You can also leave your premium tools here at false. That way, you have exactly the configuration and layout that I have. Personal preference, I think it's the best, but that's just me. Obviously, you guys can go through and customize it however you'd like. And as I was mentioning before, that little tip about organizing your ribbon, I took my casework and soup configurator icon settings. I did exactly the same thing. Small ribbons equals true. The group free tools is false. The group premium tools is false. And I made one more change. Revit ribbon tab name. Right here, if you change this, you can actually control which tab the icons, the actual suite will appear on. In this case, RET content. That's the tab that I have in Revit. And if I open up the SuperDoor configurator, it's also on RET content. And that's why if I go into my Revit environment right here, I have an RET content. My SuperDoor and casework configurators are over here. So you guys have the ability, if you do want to have all the tabs out there, that you can control what tab certain tools appear on by basically overriding the tab that it goes to. By default, it will always go to Revit Express Tools unless you put something else in that list. All right, so this is all the suites that I've got installed from CTC, and there are all the suite icon settings that go along with them. All right, let's take a look at the overall suite settings. So let's get back into this text file. Once again, it says, to be used, this file must be to the folder Program Data, which is that right there, C Program Data, CTC Suite Settings. Notice no version here. There's no 2015, 2016. That means when you deploy this one file, it automatically controls all of the installed suite settings right away, all 4 versions, 14, 15, 16, 17, with one settings file. That should make your IT team a little bit happy if they have to push this file out. So they run the installer, they push this file, and the ribbon's already configured. Okay? What you do in here, there's a little bit of instructions. I'm going to skip past this and just go directly to telling you what you need to do. With this file, there's the ability here for you to actually disable the licensing controls inside the suite settings box. So right now, it's set up that everybody can control it. Well, if you've got a group in your office, it's called BIM admin. BIM admin like this, or BIM ADM. I don't think it's case sensitive, but either way, I like to be consistent. So BIM admin like that. If that's the only group that I want to be able to control any licensing on the computers, I can use that Active Directory security group right here. Also, if I want to allow people to be able to borrow a license, if they're, say, on a laptop and they're using network licensing, do I want them to be able to borrow licenses? If I do, I can say everyone can get access to that. If I change this and somebody's not in the proper group, it'll actually disable the ability for them to borrow. It'll disable the button. Within the environment as well, there's the ability here to buy now. So you have the option here of saying, well, only BIM administrators have the ability, if I paste this, to buy now. So they're now disabled. Everybody that's not a BIM admin cannot use the buy now button. Maybe I just leave this blank and I don't give anybody access to the buy now button in any one of the tools. Down below, there's a little switch here. It says allow manual ribbon button visibility changing. This is set to false. What this means is when this file is deployed within the Revit project environment, if somebody goes to suite settings, when this opens up, this window right here will be blank. It'll just be empty. They'll still get access to the ability to control how they want to see their icons, and maybe you push out a default for this, but they'll see these, but this will be blank. And as they click over on licensing, however those settings are set up for borrowing or whatever, those will be set up differently as well for them, depending on what you configure in that window. So we're basically giving you full control as much as we can for you to be able to go through and configure. That's not the window. I guess I left it open. Close this guy out. Sorry, I thought I had the right document open, but there we go. This one. So allow ribbon button visibility changing. I usually will set this up. If I'm going to roll this out with Active Directory, I really want to lock down what they're able to see. The other option here says use Active Directory for ribbon button visibility true. Well, if I'm pushing this file out, I probably will want to be doing that. I could say false to this and let them still have individual control as to which tool they get access to, but they can't still perhaps change licensing or hit the buy it now button or whatever, right? There's some reasons why you might want to enable this or disable this rather. In the future, as we release updates, just recently we pushed out a new manager suite, and the new manager suite had a new button called Schedule Parameter Resolver. Well, some of my clients didn't want all their BIM admins getting access to this, or maybe we push a new tool into Project Suite. If it's not specified down here how it's going to display, this option right here where it says Show Unspecified Ribbon Buttons for the AD groups, if I set this to everyone, it's going to by default show any unspecified buttons from down here up on the ribbon. Well, maybe here again, I only want BIM admins to see anything that was unspecified, and then they can start to determine whether or not it needs to get added to this list of updates if, again, there's a new tool added to this suite. And now you can go through and you can start to really configure who gets access to what. So if I say only BIM admins get access to the BIM list admin tool, maybe only BIM coordinators get access to the detail link tool. Length coordinator, maybe nobody gets access to this because it's not even useful for our company. I can just delete out the group right there. Project link admin, if you're using this, maybe again only BIM admins get access to that. Quick select and renumbering, maybe everybody gets it. Maybe you guys aren't doing fab. You don't need that tool. Maybe you don't really need to use model compare. You can get rid of that tool. Maybe you don't want every Revit user using revision manager. You can just make that BIM admin capable. So you can really tune with Active Directory who gets access to what, and then internally in the company, when somebody gets a promotion and then all of a sudden they're promoted up to be a BIM coordinator in the Active Directory group, automatically they get all the right settings. You have to go to their individual computer and configure them. They're just getting the setting right away depending on what group they're in. This is also really convenient then if you have to reinstall a full computer. All you have to do is roll the one settings file and not remember exactly which tools they had visible or not, because Active Directory can control all of that. So how does this actually work? Well, let me do this. I'm going to save this file as into the correct directory. It's supposed to go to C, Program Data, CTC, where does it go again? Suite Settings, right here. And I'm just going to save this project suite settings file right there with the right name, and now it'll take effect the next I restart Revit. So it's going to completely ignore my settings file. My other settings file actually says to show me all of the tools up here. But the Active Directory setting says if I'm not in a certain group, I don't see certain tools. So let's close down Revit and reopen it up again. Close it down, give it a second to clear memory, open Revit right back up. We'll give it a second to open here. And because I now have the project, that went behind the window here while Revit's opening. Because I have the project suite settings file right here in the Beta CTC suite settings, it's going to take the precedent and it's going to control everything about what I see, which tools I see up on the ribbon. Okay, let's open up into another junk project file here and see what group I happen to be in. I know that I'm actually not a part of the BIM admin group at CTC because we have one. But if that Active Directory group doesn't have me in it, it's not going to show me tools. We also don't have a BIM coordinator group here at CTC. We have other security groups, but I'm doing this on purpose so that I can show you what tools I will see and which ones I will not. So here you can go. Here you go. You can see now that I've got certain tools that are missing. BIM list admin's missing. Project link admin is missing. Some of the other tools that I gave no rights to at all, those are missing, of course. And let's go take a look at suite settings. Because Active Directory is controlling my settings, it's here the system administrator controls which buttons are available. So I can't do anything with which are visible and which are not, but I do still have control over how I want to see my icons right here. So now I can go through the exercise of, rolling this out to everybody in my company, pushing that settings file, and as long as they're in the right Active Directory group, they see the right tools. And that's it. All right, little bonus today, because I want to make sure you guys understand how you can push this out somewhat easily if your IT team isn't necessarily on board with pushing these settings files out. I happen to have on my jump drive a CT folder. And in that folder, I have some settings that I've already pre-configured for every single one of my tools. So all of these tools have certain settings pre-configured. If I go into the batch suite settings, for example, inside here, I have turned admin is the only people who can see family loader and project file upgrader. Everybody can see plotter and exporter and family exporter and the suite settings. And of course, they can't change them. Any unspecified ribbon buttons are only available to BIM admin. Same settings I did before. All these files are all identical. The only thing that's different is what goes on down here in each one of those individual settings files. So I've set up the tops all the same. If I go into something like the manager suite, maybe across the board, I only want everybody in my company to get access to maybe family tools, maybe project cleaner, maybe everybody gets DIM checker right here. Maybe everybody can see import and link manager, maybe type swapper. But BIM admins down here, they only get access. They get access to some of the powerful tools: family processor, shared parameter manager, schedule parameter resolver, tools like that that are really powerful that only certain people in my company should get access to. I've got that all set up. But here's the deal: I don't want to have to go copy, plug my jump drive in these 5 settings files every single time. So I also wrote a little bat file here. It's a little suite settings file that copies my settings from the F drive. This jump drive right now is plugged into the F drive on my computer. If I just run this bat file right now, let me pull up that other window here in the background. Program data suite settings right here. So here's my suite settings as they exist right now. I've got a file that was edited as of 40. I'm going to go ahead and run, and that's just the one project suite. I want to have all the other suites as well. I'm going to go ahead and rerun this RET setup right here. What this does is just a little simple bat file copies from the F drive over to the suite settings folder. In a matter of seconds, it copies 5 files, tells me all suite settings were copied. When I hit any key, of course, that window goes away. But now I've got all 5 of those individual settings files pushed up here. And if I shut down Revit and open it up again, you're going to see a very different ribbon for me now when Revit reopens, because all of my tools have been instantly configured based on Active Directory security settings. So we'll give us just a second to restart. So there was a question that popped in. It said, why is Active Directory the only way to limit users to access various tools while still allowing them to change the icons in groups? And the reason why is because, well, that was a decision that was made internally. That's kind of why. If you guys want to have a requested change on that, and maybe you want to have other ways of locking out the ribbon button visibility control with a text file or something, certainly send us wish list items on that. Let us know, and we can talk with the dev team about getting some extra controls in there to allow that to be, controlled in sort of a manual way instead of Active Directory way. All right, Revit is in the process of opening. Where did it go? Where did my Revit go? Did I not double click it? There we go. Try and fire it up again here. Thought I double clicked it a while ago, but I guess I did not. All right, so Revit is opening up. It's loading up my add-ins right now. It's reading all those settings files. And when it's doing that, when I open up here into my architectural template, there we go. Give it a second to load. My computer is getting slower and slower as the day goes on. Here in my Revit Express Tools now, you can see I have fewer settings here for the batch suite. I've only got one column of tools. Data suite didn't change whatsoever. The manager suite is much smaller here because I'm, again, not a part of the BIM admin group in our Active Directory because, well, we don't have one. So it's obviously important you spell those names correctly. But now I've only got access to the tools that every Revit user in the company is supposed to be able to see. Project suite, same thing. I've got certain tools that I'm allowing everybody to see. And then also, up here in my RET Content tab, I'm only able to see the two configurator tools. I don't get to see the admin tools. And technically, at this point, if I was an administrator in the company, I would probably take the suite settings right here and disable them completely in those settings files, and I would probably turn off the small icons and force people to use the large icons. That probably would save me some space up here, but that's up to you as to how you want to configure that. Either way, though, I mean, you do have now full control, and if you go back and review this video in the future, you should have the ability to control all of that. So then the question popped up from somebody and said, where are the groups such as BIM admin created? All right, that's created by your IT team inside of the Active Directory controls as a security group. You won't be able to create them yourself unless you actually have admin controls. If you've never created a security group before, certainly you shouldn't be the one creating it right now. You want to be talking to your IT team and talk with them about what security groups they have, possibly asking them to create a couple for this particular purpose. Depends on the size of your company is going to determine whether or not they're going to be super receptive to that. Or if they've already got groups developed, they can usually give you some names. I know just the other day I was working with a company that, well, let's see, they have about 300 individual users within the company. About 100 of them are Revit users, and they recently went through and deployed these Revit Express tools. And they had to create a couple of security groups. But the IT team was very receptive to it in that case. When you approach them with the reasons why and you show them how it's going to be deployed and how it's going to be used, in a lot of cases, they'll be very receptive to it as long as you communicate clearly and, well, calmly as well. And then you can have them, you supply all the files that they need to deploy out, and then they can do that in a very simple, easy way. All right. All right, so that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for attending this webinar. I really appreciate your time. If you do have any other questions, feel free to put the questions window here because I'll continue to watch that. But if you want to know more about this, or if you've got any wishes around what I've just shown you today, certainly email us there, support@cadtechnologycenter.com, or give us a call. See the number on the screen there. This video will be posted to our YouTube channel there, YouTube/CAD Technology Center. And, of course, follow us up on Twitter for any new releases of new tools, new information, fun things from Autodesk, upcoming technologies, and things like that. No other questions are showing up in the questions window, so I think we're going to cut off the webinar today. Thank you all again, and have a wonderful week.